Harmy, I listened very keenly and with a smile on my face to your updates after each day's play with John Norman. And there were times when the two of you could barely suppress a giggle. There was a sense of unreality about the whole thing, wasn't it? I mean, truly, truly extraordinary. It's still sinking in. I still look at the scorecard now, and I must have seen a million scorecards in my life, but when you see one that looks so peculiar, one that you've never seen before, it takes a while. It's still sinking in.
It is. It was an unbelievable win, fantastic win. But you're right. When you look at the scorecard, you go, "How on earth can this possibly happen? How in the modern day can a team concede 800 and just short of 850 runs? It's madness." But fair play to Brook and Root. They were excellent. They were absolutely brilliant. Pakistan look a million miles away from where they need to be. I'd understand if that scorecard was in England and Pakistan was so out of their depth when it comes to the conditions. You're playing in your own back garden. To concede nearly 850 runs in your own back garden in one innings is, I mean, we had Jason Gillespie on and we talked about the problems that Pakistan have got. I didn't think they had as many problems as what they actually do, and you see the Twitter all over this week. But fair play to England. That was a monumental win, and one that I think during that time we're talking to John Manners. At the end of every day, I was adamant that was going to be a result, but I was adamant that was going to be like what we normally have in that part of the world. The game goes fast forward. It's going to start spitting and bouncing and keeping low, and it didn't really do that. And England's second innings, they're bowling. I mean, it was a colossal effort from the seamers. And one, I think, with a little bit of another scratch head moments from the way Pakistan applied themselves in that second innings. But taking nothing away, England were absolutely brilliant.
Okay, Ollie Pope's been involved in a couple of extraordinary wins. He was part of the team which won 3-0 in Pakistan a couple of years ago. And then, of course, he played a massive role in that extraordinary win in Hyderabad. He was asked afterwards as standing captain where it ranked amongst England's great away wins. And there have been a few over the years. I mean, there was Mumbai and Kolkata in 2012, extraordinary wins. Melbourne, 2010-11 Ashes. Cape Town in 2020. So lots of away wins. This was Ollie Pope's take.
I'd be right up there. I think there's probably definitely top three. I think I can think of probably Islamabad was right up there, and then I think Hyderabad as well was right up there, and Trent Bridge. I think probably those four of the ones that as a team we really look back on, and this is right up there with the rest of them too.
Ollie Pope talking about where this victory ranks. Let's move on to Joe Root. We've got so much to cram in. He's played 147 Test matches now. He's never missed a Test match through injury or illness. It was paternity leave, and it sounds like blasphemy now, but he was actually dropped 11 years ago, back in 2014. But in his last 91 innings, he scored 1800s. The last 3 years has been one of the longest lasting purple patches of modern times. And he was talking to our friends at Sky, and he was asked what has been the key to this extraordinary 3 years of almost unrelenting success.
As you know, I spoke to you about this in COVID. I spent that period off really looking at my game, the areas where I felt there were little holes in it and weaknesses, and just really tried to have a really good understanding of my strengths and weaknesses, and then work with the strengths and try and tighten up the areas within my game that needed to probably just raise the level. And not all of that's technical, some of it was mental, and just maybe looking at the game slightly differently instead of always being about where's my head, where's my hands, are my feet lined up right, am I playing the angles right, can I find a way of getting to bowl in a different area? I suppose just that switching mentality of, it doesn't really matter sometimes if you're in the wrong position, as long as it's effective, and you're finding ways of, keeping the good ones out and applying pressure when they miss.
Joe Root, keeping things simple. Harmy, he's once again found his own approach and tempo, and he's batting like Joe Root. And when the Bazball party started, He got himself a red nose and a party hat and felt like he had to join in. But and it was great to watch. I mean, he scored his fastest 100 at the beginning of the Bazball era. But we're a lot happier with Joe being Joe, aren't we?
Yeah, absolutely. We are so happier with Joe being Joe. He's still got the party hat, I think. I'm not sure he's got the red nose and the glasses, but I think he still wears the party hat to keep going with the team. He is so important to this unit. It holds them all together. I mean, Harry Brook, when batting with Joe Root, there seems to be a level of calmness about Harry's game as well, which I think that been rubbed off from England's greatest ever batter. And I think that, for me, the record that he went past, you mentioned not being injured, only being out for paternity leave. For me, he goes past Sachin Tendulkar, barring a big major injury. Because you're right, I think he seems to thrive in this unit. We've seen him out in the West Indies. We've seen him out in Cape, in South Africa, when we had the games when he was captain, and the captaincy didn't wear hugely on his shoulders when it comes to the run scoring point of view. But I think it took a lot out of him, I think mentally and physically, about the game, and not the love for the game, but the way the game was going in Joe Root's eyes, with the structure of English cricket going around at the time. And I think now, with that freedom off and his best mate Ben Stokes leading the charge, he just seems as though he's got a new lease of life. And this last 3 years has been unbelievable. And I think because of the way he goes about his job and because of the way he conducts himself as a person, I think that rubs off in the group. And, you see the level of preparation he goes to. Marcus Truscothick talked about it before, after one of the day's play, about the way Joe prepares for the game. And I think when you see that, and that was always my thing with Broden Anderson, a bowler going into that dressing room, seeing how Jimmy and Stewart prepare and get ready for a test match, and the levels, standards they set for themselves at such a high level. Anybody going in that dressing room from an England's point of view and looks at Joe Root and the standards he sets for himself, you've got to be inspired, and I think that's what he does to this group.
The 70 and 80 as well from Zach Crawley and Ben Duckett, the forgotten contributions when two blokes make 262 and 317. But Ben Duckett was asked what he thought Joe Root would finish up on, whether he'd go past Sachin Tendulkar, and he had no doubt.
If Rooty stays fit and stays on the park and keeps playing for England, then there's no reason why he can't. He's an incredible player, and there's certainly no signs of his form dipping. So, just as a teammate, I'm sure he's not thinking that far ahead. It's just special to have him around, and it's special to witness kind of the form that he's in at the minute.
Ben Duckett absolutely convinced that Joe Root will go past Sachin Tendulkar. It's a long way off. He's still over 3,000 runs, but he's got time very, very much on his side, and he certainly shows no sign of slowing down. So I've got to ask you, Harmy, well, just want to remind everybody that might be listening or watching that we're recording this just before the start of the second test match, so there'll be no news on that. The game hasn't started yet, but we are led to believe that the seam attack, Bryden Castle was really impressive in the first test, wasn't he, on a flat pitch? But it'll be a very proud moment if, as we are led to believe, it's going to be an all Durham seam attack with Matty Potts coming into the team to be joined by Bryden Castle and Ben Stokes, who'd be fit to bowl, with Gus Atkinson having a rest along with Chris Wokes. Is that right?
Yeah, that's the team. The team is going to be. There's two changes: Wokes and Atkinson out, Stokes and Potts come in. All Durham pace attack. Huge moment for the club at Durham and what they've produced over the years from a fast bowling stock point of view. It's good to see Ben back. How much he bowls, we'll see and watch that space carefully. I think they've gone the right way. I said at the end of the test match with John Norman on the following on after the test match is, on this surface, I think Bryden Castle would be more effective than Gus Atkinson. And I'd leave Gus Atkinson for the next test match in Rawalpindi and just swap them back over. I think, Castle's his ability to hit the deck hard, I think, is what I think they need on this surface, because this is going to be the same pitch they're going to play on. It will deteriorate and it's got to break up, go up and down. And then I think Cast would probably skill set would be more useful than Gus Atkinson. So I think England have gone the right way. They've picked a good side. Fingers crossed the captain can bowl a little bit just to take some pressure off the other two seamers. And hopefully we won't need too much of the captain's bowling, because the likelihood is it'll spin more. And Leach, who I thought Jack bowled brilliantly, and I was so pleased for Jack Leach at the end of that game. Really, really pleased. I mean, more than anybody else, I think I was pleased for Jack Leach the way he performed in that second innings. But him and Shoaib BASHIR was a little bit off from consistency point of view in that first test. I think they will have a lot more to play in this test match, because you'd think, because it's going to be 2 games in a short space of time on the same surface, it's got to spin. So, I think all round England have got a decent side out.
I mean, just very, very quickly, they have cut strips on either side of the first test match pitch. So it's not 100% certain that they're going to use the same pitch, but it does seem very much like that. They have re-prepared it. I want to ask you, in the immediate aftermath of that test match, you posed the question, said, do they go again on this strip? Just brush it off, tidy it up, and go again on this strip. I honestly thought you were joking.
No,
I honestly thought you were joking.
That's the way I would go, Manners. I mean, I'd try and play. They've got a result now. You go and play on the same pitch that we've just played on. I mean, like a fresh pitch, but a similar type pitch, because obviously it's right next to it. And you get a draw, you got a Rawalpindi, can't win the series. You've got to try and get a pitch that lasts 4 days. This test match pitch is only it's only got to last 4 days in Pakistan's eyes, because you've got to win. You've got to win this test match to keep the series alive. So for me, we'll talk about Pakistan, sure, in a bit, but the seamer point of view, I can understand. Can't understand the Babar Azam one, but you've got to have a pitch that produces a result, because you're now 1-0 down in a 3-match series, and that's why I've gone on the same pitch.
Records aren't absolutely definitive, but it's certainly unprecedented in the modern era. There may have been pitches that had 2 games played on them like 100 years ago, but it's unprecedented since these kind of records were kept. But I mean, it's amazing. I'm going to be watching it with absolute fascination. Anyway, a reminder, you can hear updates of all the action from England's tour of Pakistan on talkSPORT, while here on talkSPORT 2, we'll bring you live and exclusive coverage of India's 3 tests against New Zealand. You're listening to Following On here on talkSPORT 2 with me, Neil Manthorp, along with former England fast bowler Steve Harmison. And next up, we'll discuss if Pakistan cricket has reached another new low with that defeat. Delighted to say we are now joined live from Pakistan, somewhere on the road, on the highway to Multan, talking of highways. Behram Qazi is Pakistan cricket writer and broadcaster who's on the line with us now. Just before we come to you, Behram, I want to remind listeners and viewers what Jason Gillespie said a couple of weeks ago when he spoke to us about the importance of consistency in all aspects, particularly selection, of bringing success back to Pakistan cricket.
I've gone into it eyes wide open. I know there's been a lot of upheaval. There's been changes in chairmen, there's been changes in selectors, there's been changes in coaches, there's been a high turnover, there's been a lot of instability. And I've keep coming back to, if we can just develop some consistency off the field, it gives us the best chance of having some more consistency on the field. So that's been my focus, is being a consistent person as well in my demeanour and everything that goes on. We just develop consistent training routines, consistent plans, having consistent process in leading up to games, consistent training, and consistency with selection. If we can just build these things in to Pakistan cricket and show everyone that, 1, we care, and 2, we're giving this our best, then I think that gives us the best chance of having some success.
Jason Gillespie talking about the importance of consistency. Behram, so much to talk about, which I know you're going to cover. I just want to make the other point that another national coach, Mickey Arthur, took to Twitter in the aftermath of that test to say that Pakistan had the right players, they were the best players, and they needed to be backed. instead of which 3 of the best have been dropped. I don't know where you want to start. Playing the test on the same pitch, dropping Shaheen, Shah, Afridi, and Babar Azam and Naseem Shah. I don't know. I mean, there's an awful lot to cover. Is this a new low?
Yeah. I mean, every single time we're asking ourselves the same question, whether or not this is a new low, really. And I mean, never a dull day in Pakistan cricket, manners. I suppose you can say that. Look, it's a bit of a bombshell that they've dropped, right before the second test, mid-series. I mean, dropping 3 of your most talented cricketers actually in this particular squad. And then also, reusing the Multan surface, which was a joke by Cameron Ponsonby. It was a tweet, and they've taken it seriously. And it's quite radical, but honestly, given the state of Test cricket in Pakistan and how we get these roads and highways every now and then, I'm not even entirely opposed to this. This is what they've done to someone like me, that they're reusing a pitch, and I'm for it, right? That we might get some more exciting cricket. And it's a really interesting place to be right now, in Pakistan cricket, because Babar Azam, undoubtedly, right? 18 Test innings now without a half century. You can't sidestep that. You cannot just overlook that. Of course, those are significant numbers, and it is a catastrophic dip, right? But he is still, on talent and reputation, the best batter in Pakistan, right? And he's shown the world how good he can be. And the one thing we need to consider over here is that even if you wanted to rest or drop, your senior players, you don't do that mid-series, because that just adds to the air of toxicity within the dressing room. And I feel like it's going to be a really tricky place to be as well right now, Pakistan's dressing room, because you can see how polarizing these decisions are online, right? A lot of people were like, yes, Babar needs some rest and maybe some mental clarity, and maybe he needs to go back to domestic. And other people were like, okay, well, he's still your best batter. You give him a longer rope and you continue to, give him opportunities to get some time out in the middle, and maybe that fixes it. I am leaning towards that particular, side of the coin, where I feel like might as well, give him this series, and then we can, make our assessments and then do whatever. But it's not just Babar. It's Shaheen, Afridi, and Naseem Shah as well. Now, Shaheen, again, we spoke about him last time of how, before this particular test match, the 823 test, Shaheen was averaging 41 with the ball in 5 test matches after he'd returned from injury. I'm guessing those numbers would have gotten worse now that, of course, Pakistan have conceded 823, and I think he just got a solitary wicket. But, dropping him or resting him would have still made some sense, because you've got other bowlers waiting in the wings. And Shaheen, his pace has been down, like he's bowling mid 125s or 120, sorry, at times. And then, of course, he's not getting that same lateral movement when he pitches it up like he once used to. So, it still kind of makes sense to bench him. I don't know what Naseem Shah has done. He bowled his heart out and he drew the second most false shots in the test match in Multan. The figures might not reflect that, but he was one of Pakistan's best bowlers, and he is undoubtedly one of the, biggest stars and talents within Pakistan. So I don't understand in what world dropping 3 of your best players will fix anything, because Pakistan's issues are far greater, right? It is like not the scenario where these 3 were responsible for Pakistan losing. And doing it mid-series is even worse, because now you are basically hitting the panic button, and even amongst like the players, the supporters, the entire, fraternity, Pakistan cricket fraternity, you are ensuing chaos. And I don't understand what Pakistan's infatuation with chaos is, because that seems to be the norm with the PCB. And that's really where we're at. We'll come to the surface in a bit, but I really want to know what your thoughts are.
Well, to be honest, I've seen a tweet not long ago from George Dubell, from the cricketer, and there was a picture beside the pitch of Jason Gillespie. There was about 5 or 6 people, and I think it was the selection panel of Pakistan. And George said there's some very animated conversation going on here, and they've been there for now an hour. So somebody's not happy, somebody's upset. I agree. I think I said straight after the game, I'd play on the same pitch. It's going to deteriorate. We've got to get a result, and Pakistan needs a result. I struggle to understand the dropping Babar. I would have left the other 2 out in Naseem Shah and Shaheen Afridi. For the simple fact is, the way they bowled, it's either the plans that they put in place were completely wrong, or they didn't bowl to the plans that were put in place. Everything came into Joe Root and Harry Brook on an absolute shirt front flat one, and they made it so easy for them just a rotation of strike, and they didn't have to hit the big shot because. And then when you look at the pace element to it and why England were more successful on it, is they had, the release point of the bowlers, they had 5 or 7 kilometers an hour extra on it, and it was going down and up into the surface rather than kissing it off the surface. And the biggest worry for me, Behram, and it's a question where they go next, is if your best spinner is a Bra, and I know he was poorly, I mean, that would worry me big time because I'd need a spin bowler that can, one, either hold an end up or two, look threatening. And unfortunately, Abrar just looked neither. And they might need two spin bowlers in this surface because the likelihood is, with the deterioration of the wicket, having played on it last week, it probably will spin very, very early in the contest.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's what we expect, at least. So there were some footmarks and everything on that surface. And I've seen a picture. I think George Dobell posted that one as well, right? I expect the surface to be tougher to bat on. And I think everyone wants that in Pakistan because people are tired of watching dull cricket, right? Never a dull day in Pakistan cricket, but the test matches have actually been quite dull, ironically, right? And, even if this brings the spinners into it and Pakistan have a dearth of spinners, you're not wrong over there. Abrar was Pakistan's frontline spinner. And I don't know if it was his idea or the management's plan to keep bowling outside leg stump to Harry Brook and Joe Root. And I don't know, hope for them to top edge or balloon one to the fine leg fielder, if that was the ploy. I don't understand that. Because on one hand, they say that we need to take 20 wickets. And on the other hand, you're bowling these negative lines, which won't get you wickets. Why weren't Pakistan bowling outside off stump to Harry Brook like Sri Lanka did, for instance, right? Why not bait England into playing their shots and maybe, holding out that in that manner? So the strategies were all over the place. And this doesn't even cut it, right? There were so many other things that were going on apart from the negative lines. Like they took the second new ball after 5.2 overs as if the old ball was doing something. And then they overbowled Naseem Shah towards the end when, everyone was waiting for a declaration. Naseem was bowling, right? Shan Masood has lost 6 out of 6 as captain, right? And that's a record. And that's a lot of pressure. And even though he performed well with the bat in the first innings, I mean, he was ruthless versus spin. He covered Rove beautifully. And he got his 50 in 43 balls, 100 in 102. And then even his 151 was like with a strike rate of 85. But you look at the dismissal in the second innings. I mean, you've been dropped twice already. And you're basically giving the short mid-wicket fielder some catching practice. So he has a lot to figure out as well. And now you've dropped your major players. And that's also brought in this air of negativity from all corners. Because not a lot of people are happy with this. And there's good reason for them not to be happy with this, right? Because these are the sort of stopgap or muscle flexing solutions that never work. Continuity. They spoke about continuity so much, not just right now, but even in the Bangladesh series. And you even mentioned and played that clip from Jason Gillespie. That's all I've been hearing. And I like that. I was like, okay, the team is bad right now. You continue with these people, at least for the series, and then you make your judgments. And here's where I feel like having a massive selection panel might be a bad thing. Too many cooks may be spoiling the broth over here. As you know, Aleem Dar, the umpire, is now on the selection panel as well. You've got ex or former cricketers in Asad Shafiq and Azhar Ali. And then, the coach and captain are also there. And there's one more person that I am completely forgetting or blanking out right now on, who is also in that selection panel. But point is, Aqib Javed, yes. So if 7 people, including the chairman or whatever, are going to sit down and make these decisions, maybe there is a 4-3 split. And when there is a 4-3 split, some of those people are not happy with that decision. And I don't know what that achieves. Do you know what I'm saying, right? Like, this will create anarchy. And this is in the exact opposite direction of where Pakistan cricket should be heading. I don't know if you can even call this a direction, right? This is just them going on vibes. And right now, I just feel like they want to punish these particular players because it doesn't make sense to drop them mid-series. If you wanted to rest them, you would have rested them prior. But they didn't do that. And now they've created a scene. And we should all be talking about how Pakistan, cannot manage to take a wicket or buy a wicket at home. And, 135 wickets in the last 11 home test matches, that's around 12 wickets per game. That's bad. And we should also be talking about the fact that they just got steamrolled by England. 823 was the number that was conceded, right, of runs. And they lost by an innings. So this is all pretty grave. And they are 11 winless tests at home, out of which there have been 7 defeats. But all of the focus has now gone on these droppings, right? No Babar, no Shaheen, no Naseem. And this will dominate discourse, and people will just continue to fight, whether they be fan bases or the journalists or even the players in the PCB, so it seems at this point, right? If Pakistan cricket was a soap opera, this particular episode could have gotten nominated for an Emmy. I'll just leave it at that.
Final one from me then. I'm just going to have a laugh and play devil's advocate. So pretend that I'm an eternal Pakistan cricket optimist, and I said to you, but this is all a massive overreaction. Yes, every country goes through ups and downs, but we did make 556. 3 guys scored hundreds, and maybe we should just bow our heads and give credit to an extraordinary England performance. Pakistan it's just going through the natural ebbs and flows, and we'll be back. We're a proud cricket nation. Everything will be fine.
I think that is wishful thinking, because so much is wrong structurally with Pakistan cricket that, these stopgap solutions won't fix anything. Let me reverse the point of view or perspective to you, saying that Pakistan scored 556 runs in the first innings and nearly lost the game on day 4. Right? That's the flip side of it, right? That is astonishing. It is so bizarre that it really baffles you to no end. And I mean, this is a record. No team in history of Test cricket, 147 years of Test cricket, no team has scored 500 plus in the first innings and lost by an innings, right? And Pakistan have gone 6 tests back to back, losing them, not drawing them. And at home, they haven't won since February 2021 when they won versus South Africa. So this team seems to be mentally and physically toast. Right? I saw the fitness levels, and a lot of those shots in the third innings where Pakistan collapsed, which they've also made a habit of, right? They've collapsed frequently all throughout this year. Those shots were tired shots, and Saim Ayub's shot was probably the worst shot I've ever seen in a while, right? You needed to bat out 4 1/4 sessions to at least save this game, and even that seemed to be too big of a task for Pakistan. It is a downward spiral, manners, right? You look at the country and it is an economic and political turmoil. The cricket seemed to be running in this parallel universe for a bit, and now it's basically just caught up, right? So it's really, really depressing and tragic, because Pakistan cricket, of course, adds a lot of flavor, as does like West Indian cricket, right? So those were the 2 countries which everyone would really look forward to watch. And now those are the 2 countries which are basically a write-off in Test cricket at this point. And that's what really bothers me. Just as a cricket enthusiast and someone who covers the game, because for more of these teams to remain competitive is good for the sport at large. And we're seeing that completely drop off. And there can be many reasons for that. The way this game or sport is run, financially is not entirely ideal either. So that would require a whole different podcast. But all I'll say is that Pakistan managed to lose a game which was unlosable. And I actually have one more question for you guys. I've been doing some research on this. This might be my next piece, actually, right? I've been looking at this a lot. Is there even a point to bat first on these sort of roads? Because then the opposition can come and score more runs than you and then put you under pressure. Whereas if the opposition is batting first, they don't know when to declare. And a funny story, in the history of Pakistan Test cricket, every time this country has hosted a game, you get a result about a little over a half of that time, right? So 53%. And out of those wins, you win a test match basically 2/3 of the time when you bat second. I don't think anyone has thought of this like this before, because bat first seems to be the obvious ploy, but I'm here questioning that ploy. I mean, I'm questioning a lot of things. I'm also questioning why Shan Masood took off Naseem and Shaheen after 4 overs when they were actually getting the ball to do something when England's innings started. But these are all minor things. The larger issue is that you don't have a system to properly run cricket, and you make your cricketers insecure. You will drop the biggest names just to completely throw everything into the spanner. And feces hits the fan, and you just continue to get the same results. And it is so taxing and emotionally taxing as well to cover Pakistan cricket. But I hope that I've given you guys enough meat over there, because really we're all just dumbfounded at this point.
Yeah, Ben Stokes is somebody who looks at that, and he likes to chase 4th innings. He likes to put the big score on second in the, obviously, batting second. So there is something in that. I also look at it, Behram, and say, well, you got 550, as Manna said, 3 people got hundreds. Your bowling attack wasn't good enough. And if you like what England have done, England over the course of the last 2 or 3 years under Key, Stokes and McCullum, Nadeem Shah might be a quality performer, Shaheen Shah might be, and he is an unbelievable performer. But for them wickets, they're not what you need. You need something different. And I think that's what England have identified. We need pace. We need this type of spinner. We need like release point has got to be at X. And they've gone outside the box to try and get 20 wickets. And that's what's happened. They score fast enough and they've got bowlers who can get 20 wickets. And that, unfortunately, I don't see that in Pakistan.
I mean, look, you can save test matches with your batting, but you can only win them with 20 wickets or a fancy declaration, which you can never put past Ben Stokes as England either. But I completely agree with you. You know, good sides find a way to take 20 wickets in whatever conditions. And Pakistan's bowling has been abysmal. That has been the bane of their existence in home test cricket for the last 3.5 years, because that's why they haven't won anything, right? Look at South Africa, for instance. It's not a side that's doing particularly well. The batting resources are, you know, not particularly flattering right now, but they will still win games of cricket, test cricket, because they will outbowl other teams. Pakistan is also not a team going through like a good period by any means, but they just simply can't seem to buy a wicket. And, you know, 135 wickets in the last 11 home test matches paints the perfect picture. And even if the runs aren't coming, you know, bowling is Pakistan's biggest issue. The surface hasn't helped, but the tactics were worse. That's what I'm trying to say, right? Like, if you're bowling outside leg stump to Root and Harry Brook and saying you can just take those easy singles, you know, sweeping the ball and being safe, what are you achieving here? You might dry out the boundaries, but they're still going at 4 and over, right? And Pakistan scored 556 and 149 overs, whereas England in one more over had 823. So they had 267 runs more, which is an entire like ODI, if we're being real, right? So that's basically, you know, just a summary of all that's going wrong over here. And right now, they're just in panic mode. And I feel like they want to make some statement of their own. It's not the correct one, because when, you know, whoever replaces these people won't just come in and fix everything like some sort of messiah. And this entire country has been plagued by the messiah complex. They don't look towards structure or system. They want some hero to emerge and fix everything. And this is, you know, unanimous, or it's basically everywhere, across every institution more so. And I feel like Pakistan just needs to, or PCB needs to sit down and kind of make some long-term plans and not try to act as if they will back a player to the hilt and talk about consistency until they don't back that player, right? That's what we've seen over here. That's basically the gospel truth, that they said that, no, we're backing our players. We're going to be consistent with our selection. Bam, 3 guys gone. You got to drop them all if you want to change something. And this is just classic reactionary administration, which has been the story of Pakistan cricket throughout their history, right? There have been maybe some few periods in between where things had some semblance of stability. But other than that, this is basically what it is. It's decisions made on a whim, decisions made emotionally, and often to flex your muscle, and, you know, a lot of power brokerage in there. And I would say that the biggest factor towards Pakistan's decline is the fact that there's been so much volatility in administration. You know, all these different coaches and chairmen, and, you know, there's been captaincy changes, and there've been selectors every 5 minutes. These things hurt Pakistan cricket. And we've just gone on and seen another episode in this very, very long TV show, which, like I said earlier, could easily get an Emmy nomination, because this is reality TV. Who wants to watch the Kardashians when you can watch Pakistan cricket?
But drive safely. I do hope the road to Multan is as flat and as safe as the road in it. I hope you enjoy the test match.
I hope that we get a tantalizing game where it's really tough to bat. And even if Pakistan lose, look, ultimately people want to turn up for games where the cricket is scintillating and there is an even balance between bat and ball. That's what Pakistan's administration or curators haven't been able to provide the masses. That's why you don't see any fans in the stadium, right? We're talking about the DJ being really good because there was nothing else to talk about, right? In other shows. So, I mean, let's see how it all pans out. England definitely favorites. And Pakistan are absolutely clueless right now. And I feel like, you know, they probably need therapy as a collective unit that can probably fix it, because this is just very, very haywire, even by Pakistan standards.
That's Behram Qazi, cricket writer and broadcaster, on his way to Multan for the second test match. You're listening to Following On here on talkSPORT 2 with me, Neil Manthorp, along with former #1 bowler in the world, Steve Harmison. Next up, we'll be joined by former England spinner Graeme Swann to look ahead to a big few months for the England Lions and discuss Jack Leach's return to Test cricket. You're listening to Following On here on talkSPORT 2 with me, Neil Manthorp, alongside former England fast bowler Steve Harmison. And if you've missed any of the show and you want to catch up, you know what to do. Download the podcast from the Following On feed, available via the free talkSPORT app or wherever you get your podcasts. Graeme Swann is here. I'm delighted to say he's joined us. He's found some time to talk about the England Lions development camp, which he'll be a crucial part of, a tour that ends with a 4-day game against South Africa A. And the chance, Swanee, to work with Freddie Flintoff, amongst many things that I'm sure you're excited about.
Hello, Manners. Hello, Harmy. Good to see you. Yes, it's been a long time since I worked with Freddie. I think 2009 was the last time in that famous Test match at the Oval that actually Stephen Harmison won the game. I know he didn't win it, but I think I took the last wicket. But he took the last wicket. He took the most of them. We finished it off, and that was Freddie's final song for England, wasn't it? With that famous run out of Ricky Ponting. He's had his time, you know, in television and set in Hollywood and the silver screen alight, but he's back, and I think it's a brilliant thing for English cricket. It has to be. He's so charismatic. He's such a larger-than-life personality, and beneath that, that many people won't know because they'll all see the lad that was Freddie and the sort of the aura that he created is probably the sharpest cricket brain that's not been tapped into. And now he's back. Good old Qazi managing to coax his best friend back into it because Freddie's got a lot to give, and I'm excited to be a part of it.
And you're going, you know, there's a lot of talk about, you know, the spin element of English cricket from you finishing playing, Swanee, to where we are now. It's not been a massive stock. And I think I've been talking about this for ages, that COVID period where we couldn't get ear tours to go and tour other places, under 19s and all that. I think our development of players did stop. And I think the spin bowling department suffered quite a bit, not being able to go to the likes of India, Pakistan, UAE, whatever. But now, when you look around the country, Swanee, there's quite a few. You've got 3 or 4 spin bowlers going with you. It's exciting now about having an 18-year-old leading England's off, you know, leading spinner. You must be, you know, looking forward to going away and working with them.
I think there's a lot of things that happen with spin. First of all, like from 2012, I think when me and Monty with the spinners in India and we won, I think English cricket got the sort of misguided belief that we'd cracked it with spin because we played spin so well on that trip, because Alistair Cook got so many runs and KP was batting so well on that trip. And I think we just naturally assume now we're good players of spin and we're good bowlers of spin. And if you look back, it was sort of a tour of freaks, because Alistair Cook is a freak in himself, getting that many Test hundreds. KP, we know what a freakish talent he was, sort of generational talent. And then spin-wise, we had Monty, who didn't really understand what the coaches were saying, and me, who didn't listen to a word the coaches were saying. So we didn't actually, English cricket wasn't actually in that good a place when it came to spin. We were just lucky at the same time that sort of 4 mavericks came together at the same time. I think since then, there's been a bit of a wake-up and a realisation that we haven't focused on it, on A, playing it well enough, and B, bowling it well enough. COVID, like you say, was a massive thing as well, the lack of sort of exposure to it. I think it needs to be really started to move in the right way 2 or 3 years ago. Sort of almost last year, they took about 9 or 10 of us, or 10 of them to Abu Dhabi, and it was almost like an old-style trial. And we just got to watch kids bowl, see who could bowl spin, who had the potential to be a world-beaten spinner. That's where Shoaib BASHIR comes from. You'd have never heard of him if it hadn't been for that trip to Abu Dhabi, that he suddenly stood out head and shoulders amongst the rest. I think from there, we're moving forward. Farhan Ahmed, who's going on this tour to the Lions tour to South Africa, he's a kid. He's 16 years old from Nottingham, but he's got it. He's got what it takes, and he's got the potential to be unbelievable. So we're now really focusing on people who could be incredible in international cricket, rather than people who go through the mill of county cricket, average 35, tick a right box, say yes to the right people. The English cricket did for years. So, yeah, I think the fact that Keys is in charge and he's sort of the most anti-establishment man I've ever met, and now he's running English cricket, it works, and it's exciting.
James Coles and Jack Carson played a massive part, didn't they, in Sussex winning Division 2? Yeah, you mentioned Farhan Ahmed. I mean, he took 10 for on his first-class debut for Notts, and he bowled 70-odd overs. I mean, that's verging on abuse.
It's really, but you know what? In this day and age, it would be a lot of people will go, "Oh, he's bowled too many overs. He's so young. It shouldn't be happening." But as a spin bowler, it's the greatest thing ever. Because as a spin bowler, you need to bowl so many overs. You need to just get as much repetition and as much experience. I knew that Farhan could do it. Even he blew me away how well he did on his debut. And yes, it was 10 for a lot in a very high-scoring game against Surrey, the champions of England. But 10 wickets on your debut as a 16-year-old, probably had time off from school, from his GCSE maths or something, is bonkers to be able to do that. And if you see the way he took his wickets as well, he's probably bowling people out. He's not getting them all caught on the boundary. And so, yeah, he is an exciting talent. I mean, he's Rayan Ahmed's little brother. He's not got the same sort of bouncy swagger that Rayan's got. He's a very different person, but he's so quietly confident in his own abilities and he works so hard. He's got the same passion for cricket that Rayan's got. And that family, well, they deserve MBEs, I think, if they believe in the royal family. They're probably should be queuing up outside Westminster in a few years' time, because I think they've got 2 world beaters in their family already.
Yeah, they have. And, talking about world beaters, but, Jack Leach has had to carry England's spin bowling on his shoulders for a few years. He got left out for sure. BASHIR, like you mentioned, Keezy and McCullum and Stokes see this talent that, England need from a release point and driving into the surface. But he came back last week, and how pleasing was it to see Jack get 4 wickets and, be on the winning victory side in that first Test match?
I think it's brilliant. The fact that Jack Leach is still there and still doing it is brilliant, because Shoaib BASHIR, don't get me wrong, is a generational talent and will win Test matches for England for a long time. But he's so raw and young still, there will be blips along the way. And the way that Pakistan attacked him at the start of the Test match showed that they fear him. They think he could be a match winner. But by doing that, they took their eye off the fact that Jack Leach will run up and never miss the spot. He'll just bowl the same ball time after time. And then first innings, that might not be what England necessarily want, to try and win a Test in this new sort of Bazball era. But in the second innings, when there's wickets falling at the other end, you've got non-stop pressure from someone like Jack Leach. And that was made up for him. He's a lovely lad. He's not the most gregarious and confident of characters outwardly, but he knows what he can do, and he just ran up and did it. Just a note on that Test match, by the way, I gave up on that. When Rooty and Brookie both had 250, I turned it off. I was bored stupid watching it, because Keezy had asked me to have a look at Shoaib bowling. I thought, he's never going to get another bowl. We're going to get 1,500. And I went and played golf the next day and missed the actual victory. So hands up, I'm a terrible cricket watcher. But I was 3 under par, so I'm over the moon with that.
What did you make of the situation where Shoaib BASHIR couldn't get in the Somerset team ahead of Leach, and Leach couldn't get in the England team ahead of BASHIR?
I mean, that's crazy. That wasn't the situation that was riling me. The fact that Tom Hartley couldn't get in the Lancashire team ahead of Nathan Lyon was the one that was winding me up. But I think we should offer the Australians a lifeline and say, yeah, you're obviously worried about players. Let's give your off spinner, who hasn't got a very good record in England, let's give him a chance to come and practice in English county cricket first. That's the way to win the Ashes in a few years' time. Well done. But no, in all seriousness, yeah, it was a bit of a bonkers situation. But there's always going to be that. The fact that McCullum and Key are in charge of the England team, they think so outside the box compared to county cricket. County cricket is still stoically conservative and very scared of doing anything different. They'll still pick military medium pacers on green tops and think that's the way to win a championship. They don't get genuine sort of back of a length, move it away and get a world-class spinner to try and win the championship like Essex and Surrey have the last few years. But so that was the way it was going to be. There was always going to be a clash of interests and a clash of, outlooks, if you like. And thankfully, I mean, it's worked both ways, because Jack's got some cricket and he's helped to win this Test match. But I think long term, if the ECB can just say, look, this is bonkers, he's the best spinner in England. If you're not going to play him, then you have to let him go and play for someone else.
You did that, didn't you, Swanee? You did that. You went from Northampton to Notts. I'm not saying that was the reason you've gone to a Test playing county, but there is it is greener on the other side sometimes, and you might have to make a difficult decision for your own best interest. And Shoaib might have to think that?
I think you might have to. I mean, mine was made easy for me by the fact that Kepler Vessels hated my guts as coach at Northampton and wanted rid of me. In fact, if it wasn't for two South African coaches, Duncan Fletcher and Kepler Vessels, I'd probably never be any good anyway, because they both spurred me on by detesting me and making me realise if I'm going to get back in the England team, it's got to be more than just taking wickets at Northampton on a turning pitch. I've got to test myself. So thank you both, if you're listening or watching, for surreptitiously getting me to the point I got to. But yeah, I had to go to Trent Bridge. I decided I could have gone to Lancashire at the time. That would have been sort of on paper the most obvious place to go because it's a turning pitch. But when I spoke to Nottinghamshire and they just said, look, we want to win the county championship. They were very proactive. They were very forward thinking at the time. They said, oh, we don't care about one day cricket this year. We want to win the county championship and you're the spinner. We want to win it. Imagine hearing that as a spinner who's being sort of overlooked by everyone for England for 8 years. Going to do that, realising at Trent Bridge it's hard to bowl spin. But I had Chris Reed as the wicketkeeper, who I still think is the best keeper I ever bowled to. Matty Pryor's very close behind, by the way, by then. But having Reedy there and working, I mean, that turned me into a test bowler. So it is difficult for anyone to uproot and go. But if you look at Shoaib, what he's done in his career up till now, he was happy to go trialing, playing MCC, you know, just getting games wherever he could to get to where he is now. I don't think it would be particularly difficult for him to manage from a personal point of view. I think it'd be pretty hard to stomach for Somerset if they lost this talent that, you know, is going to be England's best spin bowler for the next 10 years, in my view.
Swanee, just back to the development camp and the tour itself. I have to question Cape Town as a venue. I mean, with all those nice restaurants and bars and golf courses and the waterfront and Table Mountain. I mean, for an assignment as serious as this, would Potchefstroom not have been better, or maybe Bloemfontein?
Man, as well to say that with straight face. Man, as well to say that with straight face.
What England are doing here is they're trying to mimic what the senior team do. If you see the senior team, they're not old school. They're not like the SAS were 20 years ago, where you take out every creature comfort and everything that's good about playing cricket for your country. And I'm not saying Poch would do that. I've been to Poch. It's a very fine facility. But I think as part of the management team who are going out there to try and mould these teams, I think Cape Town is an exceptional choice as a venue. And just because my golf clubs are already packed, that doesn't mean I'm going. But no, on a serious note, I think if you actually follow the England cricket team round at the minute, there's so much given to the players that, yes, you're professionals, you're playing for your country, and you deserve that. But you're grown-ups as well. If you want to play golf, you go and play golf. But if you're not 100% fit, ready and raring to go when you cross the line each time, then that's it. That's your career gone, and it's your fault. And that's what you've got to treat people like these days. They're grown-ups and they make their own decisions. And believe it or not, on this A trip of the team I've seen, there aren't that many golfers. So it might be me nursing Freddie Flintoff around the golf course at the end of the day. If I have to do it, I will.
Yeah, it could have been worse. It could have been Fred from 10 years ago when he hasn't, and we've got to remember, he hasn't had a drink for 10 years. He is a different personality to us when he's playing. Mentioned him briefly. I think I said this to Manners last week or 2 weeks ago. I think it's unbelievable chance for these young lads to work with. Somebody as sharp as what Andrew is. Your enthusiasm for these young lads to learn from. It's going to be so good for them to tap into the information that you can potentially give them.
Yeah, I think people like me and Fred and yourself were always overlooked when it came to that. Never seen as serious, never seen as people who could sort of be management material, captaincy material, just because we didn't fit the mould. We didn't say yes. We didn't, dress properly. We weren't always the people handing our homework in on time. But we all had good cricket brains. We all know how to win test matches for England. I think that's the greatest thing. Putting Qazi in charge. I mean, I'm not sure whose idea it was. I think probably Straussy, which would blow my mind because you'd think Strauss would be the most box-ticking Sergeant Major type ever. But he is a very, very sort of sharp mind. Putting Qazi in charge, who saw it from the other side. Qazi has always been that anti-establishment man who never said yes, never did anything right off the field, and yet won games of cricket and knew how to be hard-nosed and fed into other systems as well. You used to eat from Andrew Simons' mind and say, well, this is how you do it. In Australia, this is how you do it differently. English cricket doesn't work. How can it work? And the very fact that he's got Fred, got me involved, I'm waiting for Stephen Harmison to be brought on charge of the fast bowlers, because I think, not just saying this, Harmy would be phenomenal at doing that. I think English cricket's in a good place to move forward. In 5 years' time, we might be all sitting there going, oh, we need some sergeant majors back in charge. We need, people like Nasser to be captain now, and rules put it back in place, and youngsters, being seen and not heard. But until that happens and England are winning test matches, I think we're in a good place.
Finally, from me, Swanee, how's the camp going to work? I mean, do you have the itinerary? I know we finished with a 4-day game against South Africa A, but how's it going to work before that?
I don't know the actual cross T's and dot I's of it. Yeah, I know there's a 1-day element, and I know there's a 4-day element to the trip. And having met Freddie before, we've had a staff meeting. I think it's going to be, pretty intense when it's there. I think it's going to be sort of match intensity and middle practices. However, not quantity. I think it's going to be a quality month rather than just as much as we can get in, if that makes sense. So I'm excited by it. I don't know the exact details, as I said, but my spin bowlers, put it this way, will be bowling quite a lot, I'm sure, because I know as a young spinner, I didn't bowl enough. I wasn't told to bowl enough. I wasn't encouraged to bowl enough in the right way. And I'll be getting them to do a lot of repetition. Not always at batsmen, because batsmen have a tendency to slog spinners in training that doesn't do your development any good at all. But there'll be a way around that. And I'll be doing my best to get a couple of world beaters out of this squad.
Let me know if you want me to book you any tea times.
Indeed, Manners. I've already got you down, actually. I've already got call Manners immediately. It's on my phone.
Good luck, Swanee. Hope you have a fantastic trip, and I'll have the braai ready. You're listening to Following On here on talkSPORT 2 with me, Neil Manthorp, alongside two-time county championship winner Steve Harmison. A reminder, you can now watch us on YouTube. If you're not doing that already, just head over to the talkSPORT Cricket YouTube channel and subscribe. Let's hear now from former England fast bowler Anya Shrubsole. She's recently been appointed as the chair of the MCC's Women's Players and Fixtures Subcommittee, and she's been speaking with our very own producer, Scott Taylor, about that new role and England at the T20 Women's World Cup so far.
So delighted to say, joined by the former England fast bowler Anya Shrubsole. You've just been appointed the chair of the MCC's Women and Players Fixtures Subcommittee. Firstly, what does that entail? Can you tell us a little bit about the role?
Yeah, I mean, I'm about 1 week in. So at the moment, it entails me learning a huge amount, talking to lots of people. But essentially, it's a kind of, as the title suggests, it's a subcommittee within the MCC that kind of focuses on the women's kind of playing side of the MCC. And I guess one of the big parts of that, and one of the big things that I'm looking to achieve whilst I'm at chair is helping really drive the kind of women's playing membership side of things. Trying to get more women who want to play for the MCC. There's an ever kind of growing fixture list. And it's a really kind of passionate women's cricket kind of community. So I guess really trying to drive forward and raise the profile of the women's playing side of the MCC and get more people involved.
And was this something you were sort of looking to do towards the back end of your career? Do you have one eye on looking to maybe do something like this, or did it something that sort of come to you quite suddenly, really?
It came a little bit out of the blue. So Claire Taylor, the former England batter who I played with for a while, she is the chair of the cricket committee at the MCC, and Laura McLeod, who was Laura Newton, who used to play for England as well. She did the role before me. So Laura's time was coming to an end. There's kind of a maximum period of time that you can do the job. So they contacted me to see if it was something I was interested in applying for, told me a bit more about it. And it sounded something that was really interesting. And as I've kind of moved away from cricket a little bit since I retired, what it's given me is a really great opportunity to kind of stay involved within cricket in a way that hopefully will have a bit of an impact.
Yeah, we'll talk about Claire Colner in a second, so I want to ask you about Claire. But I was reading up, you've been working as a financial advisor. How have you found that step away from being in the game to being away from the game?
It's certainly different, that's for sure. There's some aspects of it that are obviously challenging, kind of starting a new career, becoming self-employed, kind of losing that, I guess, guaranteed income that you get from being employed, as guaranteed as it can ever be in sport. But obviously that kind of brings about its own challenges. But also it's been in other ways has been really positive. Sport, but it's a brilliant way of life, but it's a very particular way of life in terms of kind of schedules and where you have to be and what you have to do. It's all very kind of controlled and all of that sort of stuff. Doing what I'm doing now, I just have a bit more control over my own life and things like that. So some not necessarily pros and cons, but some real good sides, some real challenges. But it's been good, thank you.
Good. So I take it you're enjoying it and not really that. So I know that transition can be quite hard for players who used to have everything for God knows how many years to suddenly not have that. So, but you're enjoying it, it sounds like.
Yeah, really enjoying it. I think I was fortunate, I guess on a couple of accounts, I was fortunate that I felt like I chose to retire as opposed to kind of being forced out through kind of non-selection or injury or something like that. And I kind of knew at the start of the summer 2023 that I was going to retire at the end. So I kind of had a good 6-month period to kind of work out what it was that I wanted to do. And then I met a guy. I was playing a cricket game for Lashings, and actually ended up sat at a table with another guy who's a financial advisor, and kind of got talking, and cut a long story short, have now ended up working for him at Potter Financial. So that's been a really good transition, and so far so good.
Yeah, and I did say we'd talk about Claire Connor. She was the president of the MCC, of course, a couple of years back. So how much has she been a role model for not only yourself, but for other female players and looking to get involved in the MCC as well, that there is that person to look up to?
Yeah, absolutely. I think within the women's game, full stop, kind of at the ECB and then also at the MCC being president, she's someone who's always kind of really championed and really pushed forward kind of women's cricket, and she's been instrumental in women's cricket kind of being where it is today. She's someone who's really pushed it forward in a long way, and similarly in her year as president of the MCC. So for me, it's not as grand a role as she had as president, but she's someone who I know I can always, I guess, pick up the phone to, who's kind of got that experience. And yeah, like I say, someone who's done a huge amount for women's cricket, especially within the MCC.
And we're seeing as the game grows, it can be a challenge. We've seen in the men's format juggling 4 formats, but as the women's game grows, is that the biggest challenge, making sure the schedule remains fit for purpose, I guess, and players aren't becoming overworked?
I definitely think it is a challenge. I guess you can kind of look at it in 2 ways. It's a challenge, it's an opportunity. I think one of the things that one of the advantage that the women's game I have an example of, I guess, a little bit of an example of what can happen if you don't kind of think about these things at the early stage with what's happened with the men's game. I'd be surprised if you have the sheer number of kind of franchise tournaments and stuff like that you have in the men's game at the minute in the women's. I'd be surprised if it gets the schedule gets that kind of inflated, and the significantly reduced amount of multi-day cricket, I think, makes the scheduling a little bit easier. But you're already seeing the women's the WPL overlapped a bit with an England tour to New Zealand. I think the women's Big Bash in Australia this winter overlaps with a couple of countries' tours. So you're already seeing it happen. I don't know what the answer is. For me, international cricket should always be a priority. But I guess the reality is, with the women's IPL, with the women's Big Bash and potentially the 100, the way that's going, there's more money involved in those. So it's a balance. I just hope the women's game learns a bit from the men's game.
Yeah, and one of those consequences of having all those franchise tournaments is now the depth in the women's game. There are several times where you look back, you could probably name the England 11 playing a few years ago. You had your likes of yourself and Catherine leading the seam bowling attack. Now there's so many good players in there. They've got that depth, haven't they?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's that's something that the women's game has always lacked. And like you say, you're seeing that more and more and more. You look at the India team for this World Cup, a few of those girls who are in that have been selected because of what they did in the women's in the WPL. So that's incredible. You'll just see more and more of that happening. And I think ultimately, if you can harness all of that from the franchises, keep pushing the kind of the international side of things, I just think it makes for a better all-round women's game globally.
Yeah, and just a couple more. You talk about the franchises. You played in the 100, of course. You've seen the impact of the 100, especially in the women's game it's had. How do you think that will affect sort of your role now with the MCC? Because I imagine the impact of the 100 is it's growing the game. So therefore, you should have more people interested in becoming or playing for the MCC, etc.
Yeah, definitely. That's what we really hope. So is that I guess we can harness, like you say, that growth of women's cricket, and if we can do that alongside, I guess, kind of raising the profile as much of, not necessarily of the MCC itself, because I think everyone's aware of the cricket club and the amazing stuff that they do, but if we can really raise the profile of the female playing side of that and really harness that increased like kind of growth, that increased visibility of women's cricket to boost that women's playing membership side. I think that's what we're wanting to do, and we're just really pushing and working through the best ways to be able to do that.
And just finally, I can't let you go without mentioning England and the T20 World Cup that's going on at the minute. And I guess the link to the rise of the women's game is linked with this, because the question's always been, how do you beat Australia? And I guess that gap is narrowing over the years. Are you confident that England can eventually surpass that and go on to win another World Cup?
Yeah, absolutely. I think they're going to have to play unbelievably well, but I think what they showed, albeit in different conditions, in the Ashes a couple of years ago here, that I guess like any team, if you put them under pressure and play really good cricket, that they are beatable. And I think what this group of England players have, which maybe when I was playing at times they didn't have, I think they have a real belief that they can beat them, which I would maybe question a little bit at times when I was playing. So they're going to have to play well. Australia in their first two games have played some exceptionally good cricket. I watched quite a lot of the game against New Zealand and they played brilliantly. But I think this group of England players really believe, really truly believe that they can go on and win this tournament, and I see no reason why they can't.
That's former England fast bowler Anya Shrubsole speaking with talkSPORT's Scott Taylor about her new role with the MCC, the rise of the women's game, and life now as a financial advisor. Okay, Harmy, on to other pieces of news and stories that have caught our eyes and attention. Mags, Anthony McGrath returning to Yorkshire as head coach on a 5-year deal after leaving Essex. I presume that's a very, very good move for Yorkshire. Essex's loss is Yorkshire's gain. And Matthew Fisher leaving Yorkshire to join Surrey. That intrigued me. Surrey, once again, just not satisfied with having a very good squad of 24. They keep adding and adding. So those two stories first.
Yeah, that's a good signing. Matt Fisher, I was very, very surprised when I seen that headline. But I think from Fisher's point of view, if he plays for Yorkshire, the likelihood is they try to get him through 10 or 12 first-class matches. His body can't do 10 or 12 first-class matches, unfortunately. Matt Fisher's been around for a hell of a long time. He made his debut when he was 16 for Yorkshire. His talent is unbelievable. You know, he can swing the ball both ways. We've seen that when he was the unfortunate one that went on that fateful West Indies trip to play on them, shirt fronts like Multan's wicket when they were out in the Caribbean, and end of Joe Root and captaincy. But he goes to Surrey where he probably will only play 5 or 6 first-class matches. So it could be a good move for him to prolong, keep himself body fit, get the necessary rest and recovery to go again whenever Surrey need him. But Surrey are getting a good bowler there, and Yorkshire have lost one of their own, which is slightly disappointing, I think, especially if I was Anthony McGrath going in. And Mags going in, he got back to home, innit? It was such an easy appointment that once they made the decision that Otis Gibson wasn't going to carry on, and Oaks did a great job. Got themselves, stabilised them, got themselves back into the first division, and now 5 years of Anthony McGrath. We're hearing little bits of stories that Martin Moxon's going to come back. And I'm pleased for Martin because Martin's gone through a tough time. I don't know the ins and outs of what happened. I've worked personally with Martin. I class him as a friend, and I'm really pleased that he's back in. He's got somewhere back into the game of cricket because for me, he's a good man. He's always been a good friend of mine. So I like that Martin Moxon is potentially coming back in an advisory role. And Anthony McGrath will work alongside closely with Gavin Hamilton. And McGrath and Hamilton are very, very tight. They're very, very close. It will be a laugh in that Yorkshire, around that Yorkshire group. And I wish them both well because, again, like Martin Moxon, two good friends of mine who played a lot of cricket against, played a little bit with. And I only ever want good things for Yorkshire County Cricket Club because, like Surrey, when Yorkshire are strong and Yorkshire are producing players, the England cricket team have always very, very strong as well. So good luck to Mags on that front.
Is 5 years a bit unusual? I mean, that's a long, long time in cricket, even for a coach.
Yeah, it is a long time, but it's one of your own. And I think because it's Anthony McGrath, I think 5 years is right. I think Anthony McGrath will be at Yorkshire for more than 5 years. Anthony McGrath, the only thing that's going to take Anthony McGrath away from Yorkshire is something to do with England. You're not going to lose him to another county. I don't think you're going to lose him to another franchise. You will get Anthony McGrath for 5 years. It's a project, a long-term project. And he is one of your own. He captained Yorkshire unbelievably well. He represented Yorkshire for such a long time. I think he was 37, 38 when he finished. It is a little bit unusual, but not for, if it was like Paul Collingwood going back to Durham in a coaching capacity and Durham offered him 5 years, you wouldn't batter an eyelid. It's a little bit like that. And Yorkshire's his club, and hopefully it gets off to a good start because it's going to be tough. Because I think what they've got, and I mean this with all due respect, the team that came out of the second division going into the first division, I think they need a few additions to make them not compete, because I still think they'll struggle to compete. But I still think they need a couple of additions, a quick bowler, a gun overseas player. And they've got to get their overseas recruitment right, because if they don't, then they might not be in the first division for too long, because I think they've got a lot of young heads in there who are getting improving. But I still think they need a couple of players to make sure that they sort of consolidate in the first division and then build on that 5 year plan that Anthony and Yorkshire have got with Anthony McGrath.
Okay, just before we finish with the final word, two other little stories that caught my eye, Harmy. Josh Buttler and Jonny Bairstow have signed up to the Abu Dhabi T10 in November and December. I don't know why I find that intriguing, but I do. I wonder how much they're being paid, or are they doing it for fun? And confirmation that Steve Smith will not be opening for Australia in the Border Gavaskar Trophy. He's moving back down to number 4.
Yeah, I think common sense prevailed in the Steve Smith one. I think we've quite a few England people, former players and pundits have talked about Joe Root back at number 3, and your best player bats where he wants to bat. Simple. I mean, you go into a dressing room, you go, right, where do you want to bat? And we'll bat around you. And Steve Smith says he wanted to open. You let him open. He's had his fun. He's had his go. He's wore his party hat and red nose like everyone you talked about, Joe. He's now, I think somebody must have sat him down and talked to him in his ear and gone, I think the best thing for this team is if you go back to number 4, because you are the best player of this generation from Australia. And we need you. Like Kohli's needed by India, Root's needed by England, Williamson's needed by New Zealand. Steve Smith at number 4 is if I was England, I'd want him to open a batting. I wouldn't want him at number 4 with a cookable ball out in Australia in the Ashes. I'd want him at the top, but he's now gone back to 4, and I think that's the right thing to do. In the T10 league, it's a bit of fun. It's a bit of both, I think, matters. It is a little bit of fun, and it is a little bit of money. I'm pleased Johnny's going to get a go at doing things like this, because he's now gone from international cricket, I think, for me. And so because of that, let Jonny have his fun in the franchise leagues in the T10 league. So, yeah, good on them for that.
Okay, on to the final word. Right, Harmy, we're going to let the listeners and viewers decide which final word they want to choose, but I'll chuck the first couple at you. Hayley Matthews and Rishad Hussain. I love the differences between the women's game and the men's game. I'm not saying that the women don't play it hard, but they just play it a little differently. And West Indies off-spinner Hayley Matthews, in a glorious moment coming towards the end of the Bangladesh innings, stopped in her delivery stride and just smiled at the non-striker, Fahima Khatun. Just the most beautiful smile. And the non-striker was about 2 foot out of her crease. She looked suitably sheepish and slid her bat gently back into the crease. Wonderful, wonderful moment. And Rishad Hussain, India, enough bullying now, India. They're in Bangladesh and they're absolutely bullying their hosts. Did you see the score of the third T20? 297 for 6. And the young leg spinner, Rishad Hussain, 2 overs for 46.
That's ouch. I mean, ouch. I remember once we played in Australia. We played in Australia? I remember Andy Caddick had big bowling. I mean, Caddick and Goff didn't always see eye to eye, and largely down to the fact that Goff used to just take the mickey out of Caddy, and Caddy's bowling figures were, he was very expensive one afternoon, and Goff was shouting at him, "I'm going to get Secura call in, Caddy, to take your bowling figures back down to Somerset." I mean, this was, I thought it was a 50-over game. I thought it was an ODI. And then I seen, why are they only bowling 4 overs? This can't be a T20, 297. Wow, it's ridiculous. And then as you scroll down, you see the bowling figures and you go, wow, ouch. Oh my word. And the oh my word one was, Rishad Hussain, 0 for 46 off his 2 overs. I did see the Hayley Matthews one, and I thought that was brilliant. I really did. That's the way it should be done. If it happens again, then yeah, fine. Well, we're in the right to take the stumps. But she just, it was like an old-fashioned like toothpaste commercial, wasn't it? We're just waiting to see the sparkle come off the sort of corner of our mouth, where she just smiled and said, "Not now, come on. Get yourself back and we'll play the game properly." And you're right, there is a difference, a huge difference. And you're 100% spot on. It's not because it's played in a not as harder from a women's game than it is a men's game. I actually just think they respect each other a little bit more. And it's hard to say that, but I do think there's an element more of a respect level in the women's game than there is in the men's game. Because, I'm not sure too many would have let that go. I think they're so far down the crease. The bails would have gone off and gone, well, look how far you're out. And Hayley Matthews just smiled and said, "Come on, let's play the game properly." I thought that was brilliant.
Following on here on talkSPORT 2 with me, Neil Manthorp, along with fast bowler Steve Harmison. If you've missed any of the show or you wish to catch up, you can listen back to the Following On podcast feed or watch us on the talkSPORT Cricket YouTube channel. We'll be back at a similar time next week to look ahead to the third test between Pakistan and England in Rawalpindi. But for now, this has been another Following On.
On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.